Is there a question from anyone?
Jacob has a question. Do you create most of your poems or do you find them?
Well, Jacob, I love that question. And I think it's an interaction between those two elements. I think there are poems out there waiting for us every day. But I think if we didn't sit down and engage in the act of writing, maybe we wouldn't find them. We wouldn't recognize them as poems. Um, so I think it's both. And I think that students can be easily encouraged to have a regular practice of writing, even if it's only three lines a day, which is always my minimum suggestion to everyone. Just write down 3 lines a day that belong to you, 3 things you observed today, 3 questions you had today. And you will find out something interesting about your own self, your thoughts, your questions, the world we're living in. Just start anywhere. Where you start could be all kinds of very close places. But it's definitely a combination. Yes.
Maybe this is a good moment to transition to our breakouts.
Okay, if no one has another question, that always worries me terribly if no one has a question. It means I talk too much. How do you know when a poem is ready to share? I think, it's just an instinct you have that you feel you've done all you can do with it at the moment. You might even want to work on it or change it later. Some poets continue changing their poems even after they're published. But when you have a feeling that there is some arrival place in your draft of the poem, and I love to encourage students to know you can keep working on the poem. I might go away, or you might be out of junior year of high school and you have that poem you wrote for a class session. You might continue working on it, and it might grow, it might change. But it's an instinct, and that's a beautiful question. Okay. Oh, how do you address interpretations of poems that are so far in left field without killing their spirit? Well, Sarah, that does happen. And sometimes I think you have to even say, wow, I need to think about that. That's fascinating. I can't really see it from here myself, but it will stay in my mind. And, maybe there's something to that. But I don't think you should say it's wrong. I don't think we should ever say something is absolutely wrong, because many times the student is bringing something from themselves, from their own experience to that poem that we could have no idea about. And I think we have to welcome it into the room. Thank you for your kind notes up there. So for the breakout poem session today, oh, that's very nice. What other ways can we encourage students to share poems? Yes, I think that's beautiful. Encouraging others to share can often be done in like breakout sessions that we're getting ready to do, rather than saying you have to stand up and say this is your finished, completed, perfect work, and read it to everybody. Or sometimes just to copy it down and share it in a written way with one another is easier for many students. This year, doing virtual Zoom classes with students I don't know and teachers I don't know, many times the students have typed their poem in the chat and then under it written, Naomi, you read it, or to their teacher's name, you read it. They want it to be shared, but they're just not ready to put their voice around it yet. And we've always done it, and I think the responses have been remarkable. And I think sharing strengthens us. And I always tell kids, yeah, you have to be strong and brave to be a writer. And many times the shy students are the ones who have quite a lot to say because they've been quiet for a long time. I like to ask students, Brady is saying, I like to ask students for evidence to support their interpretation. That's terrific, which generates more content. Yes, that's perfect. and it's responsive, and it also gives it gives agency to the reader. You know, this whole idea that we could possibly um, be able to know exactly what William Wordsworth wanted us to know from his poem. Um, and that we could be more right than someone else who is reading that poem differently is preposterous. But this, asking for evidence, is a way to make us more careful readers, more
Mhm.
thoughtful readers. Um, I once heard the great American poet Robert Bly say that after he had given one of his readings when he was a younger man, uh, a man came towards him and said, "Oh, Mr. Bly, I loved all the water in your poems." And Robert Bly's first impulse was to say, "What water? There's no water in my poems. I love land. I love sky. I don't write about water." But he said he caught himself realizing that the water was in that listener. The water was in that man. And he said to him, does water have particular meaning for you? This was the question he asked instead of shunning the man's remark. And the man said, yes, I grew up next to water, and being next to water makes me feel calm. And listening to your poems made me feel calm. And that was the link to the water. So when Robert Bly said that to a class of us, it made me really think about how, as Walt Whitman said, you have to honor the poet, but also honor the audience. They will bring their own experience to the poem, and they will respond in different ways than what we could predict. So I'm